On this episode of the show, I have with me Anant Veeravalli. He is Global Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Media Brands, and we're going to be talking about leading analytics by building a center of excellence. We're going to be talking to him about what that center of excellence looks like, building a global platform, some of those interdependencies, giving him and his team flexibility in delivering those analytics to their clients. And I'm going to also talk about some of the connecting the dots and data enablement and AI type of questions as well. Well, try to get as much as we can in with Anant, but I appreciate you taking the time. Thanks.
Thank you for having me over, Amir. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Tell us what you guys do over there at Media Brands before we dive in too far.
Yeah, for those of your listeners who are not aware, we are part of Interpublic Group IPG. We are proud to be one of the big 4 or 5 global advertising and marketing services organizations in the world. We compete with the likes of Publicis, WPP, Omnicom, Dentsu, Havas, etc. It's a conglomerate that's made up of a multitude of advertising and marketing entities. Media Brand specifically is the global media and marketing solutions division of IPG. Think of things that involve in helping ensure marketing investments for large brands, enterprises are serviced as effectively as possible. I also represent Kinesso and Axiom. Kinesso is the tech-driven performance agency that basically is the marketing intelligence engine. And think of Axiom, which is a leading data company in the world, as the data and consumer intelligence arm of IPG.
Absolutely. Love it. This episode, we're going to be talking about, obviously, analytics and building a center of excellence and kind of what you've seen from that. I guess to kind of start off, you obviously mentioned one of the biggest players within the space, global platform. When you look at that and you look at the reasons behind wanting to build a center of excellence around analytics, what were some of the drivers?
That's a great question. When I reflect back on the reasons why you would want to consider having a centralized, harmonized kind of analytics center of excellence, it comes back to grounding ourselves on the type of questions and challenges I hear in the advertising and marketing space, right? If I go talk to the CMOs of large brands, I largely hear things like, how do I achieve meaningful growth? How do I be a brand that is insight-led? How do I leverage AI to manage kind of ethical accuracy of what I put in the marketplace, right? How do I personalize the way I engage with my customers? So a lot of these real world questions and challenges become the linchpin of why we want to start to think about how we bring more intelligence to organizations. So when we thought about the analytics center of excellence, in our mind, there were 3 key tenets that we wanted to drive. One was client or brand focused business outcomes, like deliver value for them. 2, do it in a way that we are driving excellence across the organization. And 3, take the mindset of being as proactive in ideating and differentiating at scale for brands, right? Now, as industry leaders, just like any organization, our goal and objective is to deliver cutting edge insights, data fueled intelligence, and exceptional brand value. We know how dynamic the marketing and advertising landscape is, and we want to be kind of industry disruptors. Now, going into a little bit of what it entails, building an analytics center is easier said than done. I think people largely synonymize analytics as data and reporting. And I think there's a huge job at hand in educating people on the true value of analytics and what we call the analytics value and business outcome chain, right? Like what is truly the role of analytics within an organization? There's also the aspects of how we bring together a plethora of data, tools, tech to be able to fuel the underlying engine that catapults insights and intelligence to our clients. 3, adoption is key. I think making sure that organizations largely see the value, but more importantly, can put the value to practice is becoming more and more critical. And how we offer that in a more centralized, organized manner is going to become a key differentiator. So as we kind of reflect on how we bring together 6 different kind of regions, almost say like 6, 7 brands, about 4 or 5 core competencies, it became quickly obvious that we need to take a very standardized, harmonized, and consistent approach to how we structure an organization that would service the entirety of our framework. And that's kind of how the Center of Excellence came about as a global platform.
Interesting. I guess when you look at Obviously, you said it's well, two things in there. One, I like to kind of dive into. One, it's obviously a lot easier said than done building a center of excellence. Two, obviously, you mentioned educating around the analytics is different than reporting and insights. How when you started asking or started to go down the path of building a center of excellence, knowing what you just articulated, what did you have to position with stakeholders? Because it seems like there's some education that might have happened.
Absolutely. It's both a top down and a bottoms up approach to how we approach the change. If you think about organizations that have largely operated in their own individual region, market, and or brand, are now kind of being asked to come together as a singular centralized organization, there's kind of obvious change in the form of how people, process, and products are organized within those individual entities that need to be harmonized, right? For the people on the ground, they are used to being in their own bubbles in the day-to-day. Employees who are comfortable in servicing a specific portion of the value chain and are doing a really good job of it. A lot of times, what we realize is organizations, while they're successful in their own bubbles, the minute we start to kind of zoom out and look at the holistic value kind of quotient, now we start to realize there's a lot of opportunity or missed opportunities or redundancies and or areas where we can drive more efficiency at scale, more innovation at scale. Right? So change is tough. It does require us to take a very structured and surgical approach of how we think about building a center. And there are about 3 or 4 key tenets that come into it. One is how do we organize our talent, making sure that we're creating an organization of specialists and not generalists. So thinking about what are those core services, value-added services that we offer our clients and brands, things like AI, ML, kind of experimentation, audience analytics, visualization, and making sure that we're building a core team of specialists that can deploy in a very agile, dynamic manner, no matter what the client needs are. Two, starting to collect and curate an asset inventory or library of all of the best work that we do. The minute you start to realize where cool work is happening, a lot of that work largely gets kind of hidden in the what I call like the brand shadows, right? And how do we bring or elevate a lot of that work that brings visibility to people and also to the work that those people are doing beyond their current 4 walls? Three, I think there's an opportunity to elevate people's professional growth. If you think about you being as an employer, like an analyst in a US agency brand servicing a specific client, you're doing a really good job at that. But the minute you want to elevate and start looking at opportunities around what else is happening in the industry, what are other clients, other brands doing? What are the challenges and problems that other kind of enterprises are facing? And how do I elevate my own kind of professional learning to be able to better kind of adapt to the market needs? I think there's a huge opportunity that a lot of organizations miss out on. And I think we are presenting a very kind of next-gen opportunity for talent to come together, but also opportunities to come together as well, right? So setting up the path for growth for individuals.
Interesting. I guess just a follow-up question there. When you are in this center of excellence, obviously, you mentioned talent's important. When it comes to the skill set that goes into a center of excellence, right? I like to kind of understand maybe the type of skills that you're hiring for that type of area, and what are you communicating to them? Because obviously they have to, when you hear center of excellence, you know there's a different mission. What's being communicated to them and kind of with their challenges?
That's a great question. I think the starting point for the change is aligning on what the core competency and capabilities are that the center would be harmonizing, right? So when we undertook our transformation, we were able to do an extensive mapping of all of the different facets of work that we currently do to 4 key tenets, primarily focused on what I would call proactive growth consultation, which is how do you help brands grow or clients grow. To the notion of having advanced kind of analytics in the world of audience segmentation and strategy, which is thinking about how we build kind of consumer cohort segmentation at scale. 3 would be the notion of bringing together all of our data science practices, things like AI, ML, machine learning, which is the evolution of where AI is kind of at the cusp of now. incrementality, test and learn, econometric modeling type of kind of specialty kind of analytics function, and then data engineering, data management, and visualization. So the minute we could kind of start to boil up everything that we do into these four key buckets, it became obvious how we can start to kind of standardize not only the way we kind of approach our own practice, but the way we can approach responding to our brands and clients' needs as well. Right now, when we hire someone, we want to make it as simple and real for them to understand. Ultimately, an individual is servicing a specific client within a given brand. But the way they leverage the center is to be able to access a centralized kind of platform of people, which are specialists, platform of assets, platform of knowledge, and a consistent standardized approach to growth, which no matter which region, which market, which function you belong to, you have utmost clarity in the path to progression. And by doing this, we're also able to standardize the way we organize the individual talents within those four key tenets. And people have clarity around, if you're a growth lead today, what does an audience lead do? And what are the overlaps, the synergies, and the opportunities that you can co-benefit from by being able to be closer to those organizational specialists?
Interesting. And I guess when you, I mean, it sounds like a very robust center of excellence. I mean, I love the details. I think people are going to appreciate this because sometimes we don't get those. When you're thinking about analytics and delivering with flexibility, obviously you guys have to deliver down to the client level. Obviously,
Yep.
there's different clients, different requirements. That seems very challenging. And the reason I was saying that sounds challenging, it's difficult to have one stakeholder that consistent there. To have different stakeholders across different clients, different perceptions, that flexibility built in, like if you're an analytics person on the Center of Excellence team, what does that flexibility get you? How does that help you do your job better potentially?
Absolutely. And so I think three or four things possibly come to mind, right? You talked about resource and skill set. I think that's a fundamental kind of necessity to understand the talent that we have and the skill set that they kind of currently kind of own, because that's going to be a critical aspect of how we ensure that our resource assignments are truly based on skill and kind of account match, right? So if you think about an organization that has over 1,000 people, now the problem statement becomes that much more magnified, especially when you take into consideration the 5 or 6 geographies that we're starting to service, right? So having a clear understanding of talent alignment and a mapping exercise that's very intentional, looking at individuals as part of the center is the first step, I would say. Two, I do think by building a center, we're starting to create discipline around those four key tenets that we talked about, and the specialists in those can be deployed in a very kind of modular manner when client needs arise. By creating those four tenets, we're also taking a very intentional approach of educating our internal stakeholders. If you're in the media world, I am part of data and analytics, but I have my stakeholders within planning, within strategy, within design. For them, traditionally, they're used to the client or account that they've been working in, the ways of working. By starting to create a more global framework, now they know there's a consistent approach, no matter what. If you are a global client that services today in the US, in Mexico, in London, the ways of working and the way people are going to engage is going to be consistent. So that notion of creating a global dynamic resource model that's grounded on those four key kind of competencies or subcrafts makes it that much more palatable and easy to engage. Three, we know that we have no shortage of solutions, services, and products. So it's become a very intentional exercise of creating what I call like a library of assets that we start to profile and curate in the various brands, in the regions, in the markets, everything that we do, but start to create an inventory mapping of exactly everything that we currently do so that we can start to create what I call like a repeatable asset library. And that starts by creating a centralized location where we're porting all of these assets from those individual touch points back into one central hub. And what it does is brings access to people, to assets at the click of a button. And imagine the power of overlaying like an AI kind of component on top of it. Now the ability to be able to mine information out of those assets becomes that much more powerful. And lastly, and I think this is probably one of the most critical points, is clients are looking for specialists in the organization. They're not buying kind of generalists. So the notion of providing them talented subject matter experts who not only know the industries that they work in, but also the verticals and the specialization within analytics craft becomes that much more powerful, which means we're able to deliver more turnkey value for our brands and clients in a more expeditious manner. And we see them appreciate that, right? When you get into a conversation where you're pulling in an audience specialist from a health vertical, their ability to relate to what happens in the health industry, the type of segmentation that works, the type of consumer sentiment that happens, the distinction between the various work streams that happen there, make it that much more powerful in a conversation than just me providing an audience specialist who knows how to build and activate audiences.
I guess I mean, you mentioned AI, um, and when you're building the center of excellence, you're focused on analytics. I mean, obviously, AI is going to make its impact and mark on how people interact with the data. How much did you start, or how much have you started thinking about shifts to the center of excellence, or how an AI tool can actually help your team perform better?
Yeah, it's a very pertinent and excellent question because it is on top of mind for every brand, every client, every marketer across the world, right? The notion of human in the AI loop model is becoming more and more kind of pertinent, where we're starting to figure out how can human intelligence and artificial intelligence coexist. Within our organization, we're doing a few things. The first and foremost is starting to look at how we increase AI literacy across organization. If you think about the 1,000 odd people that we have brought together, they come from various degrees of professional maturity, various degrees of experiences, various degrees of understanding the current kind of ecosystem of the marketing landscape, but more importantly, the role of AI in the marketing landscape, right? So we are taking a very intentional approach of understanding what enterprise level AI literacy can we bring to bear so that our resources and teams have access to knowledge, but more importantly, get more acclimated with the role of AI within our day to day. The goal is to be able to make sure that we get them the resources they need when those resources are needing to be applied, right? Now, if you think about the role of AI itself, largely speaking, within our world of marketing and advertising, there's probably like numerous use cases that come to mind. I think the first and foremost is how do we use AI to build more dynamic creative content, right? How do you bring more facets of creators that allows us to look at different kind of copy edit options, right? We within our organization have built a connected platform called Interact. If you go into the advertising and marketing world, it's all about connected platforms. And that platform has taken a very AI agentic first model, which is we've taken an approach of being multimodal. So think about all the large language models like kind of Gemini or GPT or Cloud that we have access to are all integrated into one central platform that is accessible to all our employees within an organization, which means they have the ability to access the models and what the models can do for their day-to-day at the touch of their fingertips, right? Many practical use cases are things around natural language processing and query, right? So think about if you need to build an audience, how do you mine data around audience to build micro and macro segments without having to spend hours or days at length thinking about the various permutation combinations of how marketing audiences would look like. We also are starting to look at how we can bring a lot of our traditional models and model results, think of it as econometric models like MMMs and MTAs, the results of those back into the platform and overlay AI to allow it to do more scenario planning, budget forecasting at the tip of your fingertips. Imagine how powerful it is to ask the AI, tell me what's the most effective channel for me to be investing an incremental $10 million in the next quarter, and which partner should I be working with? This used to take inordinate amount of time, which is now being rapidly kind of cut short through the role of AI. Another area that we see significant kind of interest is every brand is struggling to establish their own brand identity in a very crowded marketplace, right? Everyone wants to know what is happening in my competitive landscape. If you're an AT&T, you want to know what T-Mobile and Verizon are doing. What are these niche players who are coming in that is disrupting my kind of marketplace kind of position? So there's a lot of work that we do in being able to overlay AI-driven trend analyses, competitive analyses that allow our clients to know what's working, what's not working in my competitive landscape. And lastly, what I would say is there's a lot of disruption happening in the digital ecosystem. There's no shortage of digital platforms that are making brands easier and easier to spend money in the digital kind of equation. But that also means it's harder and harder to govern what's happening, right? So two things that we are starting to look at is one is how do we understand what consumers are engaging and interacting and sharing with these digital platforms, and how do we bring a lot of that emotion and sentiment and understanding of what the consumer reactions are back to the brand so that they can be more effective in using that in creative and media and messaging, right? The second is we also know that the digital fragmentation is making it harder for brands to understand Amir as a consumer spends, let's say, 4 to 6 hours a day in the digital kind of ecosystem, right? You're on your laptop, you're on your phone, you're accessing social kind of LinkedIn's. There are things that you're doing which creates, I think, up to 10,000 interactions digitally on an average every given day, believe it or not, right? So how do we make sure that we're able to understand what those interactions are, but more importantly, drive meaningful, like what do we do with learning about those interactions back to the brands, right? So there's a lot of work that goes in being able to mine that data, a lot of unstructured data mining to be able to drive meaningful intelligence out of that. And I think the use cases can continue, but those are like 4 or 5 key kind of tenets of the application of AI that we are bringing back to our employees that they can use through tools, through large language models, through generative AI to put into practice for our clients that drives scale, efficiency, and ultimately intelligence at scale, right? So
I like that a lot. And maybe a final question, because I'm curious, because you kind of outlined all the different facets how this is helping. If you were to go back and potentially do something different, obviously, not major things, but tweaks. Are there any things that, looking back, maybe you could have done slightly different? Maybe would have been, a faster impact or better results. Is there anything that comes to mind?
So managing communication when change to this scale happens is super important. I think we overly underestimate the value of transparent communication. And transparent is a double-edged sword, right? There's things that you can be transparent about, things that you can't be transparent about. But making sure that the communication chain transcends beyond the senior leadership to everyone at the kind of analyst level, right? Everyone across your organization is largely understanding the change, but the direction of the change and the role that they will play in the change is super important. So I think one thing that in hindsight, I would feel like we could always do a better job of, and it's not that we're doing a bad job, but we could always do better, is being as proactive and as transparent and communicating the change. But more importantly, why should people care about the change? What do they see themselves as the role that they play in the future of that change? So when you bring together an organization of over 1,000 specialists from all over the world, their understanding of change can be varied. Their interaction with that change could be varied, and the way they see the outcome of those interactions manifest in their day-to-day could be varied, right? So being more intentional and not just having superficial or high level kind of communications, but getting to boots on the ground, creating skip levels, doing roundtables, doing kind of joining kind of stand-up meetings, being able to come in and have a more informal yet very clear kind of conversations around the strategic direction, the value realization, and how it's going to benefit the team at the end of the day. But more importantly, the team, the organization, and our clients, because we all live in a world of servicing our clients, our brands, and we tend to forget often that it's a trust-based relationship. And trust comes from first understanding what the true change is ourselves before we can talk about change eloquently with our clients and our external stakeholders.
Absolutely. I love that. That's great insights to the learnings as well. And I was going to thank you for taking the time to share with us, to give us insight in terms of building that center of excellence. Is there a good way of connecting with you if somebody wants a follow-up question or whatnot?
Yeah, absolutely. I am on LinkedIn. I'm happy to take invitations on LinkedIn. Maybe I can kind of follow up and drop a note on what my LinkedIn handle is, but always available, and we can take it from there and maybe move the conversation offline if need be. So
Absolutely. Thank you again for being on the show. I really appreciate your time.
thank you so much for having me, Amir.
Absolutely. All right, we'll be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think Anant did a great job of walking us through that analytics and center of excellence, and exactly what the reasons were, the benefits, the team impact. We talked a little bit about AI, some learnings. I think getting that first time insights into building something like that, a center of excellence, I think it's great. It's really helpful to understand how somebody else has approached it and solved that problem. So share this episode if you know someone else is trying to do similar or trying to learn a little bit more. I think this would be a good one to do that. Also, like, subscribe, comment, let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.